Welcome to DigglerFilms.tv. Video block week number 1, May 29th, 2020. And what is Diggler Films TV? Diggler Films is an online broadcasting station showcasing media content from Diggler Films media content contributors. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ted Williams, and I am the host of a show called Change with Ted Williams, where art, faith, and politics meet. I am a professor, I am an actor, I am an author, and I have been working in media for many years, trying to entertain, educate, and inspire people. I'm happy to be working with Diggler Films on our show to really create content that elevates and engages people with the issues of the day, but really does so in a way that inspires people to have hope. As someone who loves the performing arts and who has spent much time working in the performing arts, the arts are a way to provide us with hope. And so every week we have not only politics, not only a little education and information, but also artistic inspiration. We hope you will join us every Saturday night at 6 p.m., live streaming on Facebook. Ted Williams III is the Facebook site, and we are live streaming on YouTube and on LinkedIn as well. Please join us. Tomorrow we have a great conversation with a number of faith leaders and a profile of a local Chicago choreographer who's been doing some amazing work. Take care. I hope to see you tomorrow. Have a good day. Okay. Okay, awesome. Okay, cool. Thanks, bro.
Was presented as science, not as a circus act, because these were men of science.
The placing of the boy in the cage of the monkey is an outrage. The Negro race in America has a hard time as it is in getting away from the prejudice that it is closely related to the monkey, without having a member of the race placed on exhibition with a monkey.
Leading men of science from Harvard and Princeton and Columbia University was saying that Africans were midway between an orangutan and a human being. So 100 years later, it should not come as much of a surprise that many people still cling to these notions of European superiority, African inferiority.
Hello, welcome to Change with Ted Williams. That was a documentary for the film Human Zoos, and we are privileged to have the writer, director, and producer of the film Human Zoos, Dr. John West, joining us today. We also have an African-American history scholar joining us as well, Dr. Daniel Davis. We're going to talk about the film and its implications for not only our world in the United States, but around the world. And so I'm really excited about this conversation. Dr. West, please tell us what inspired you to write this film.
Well, first I learned about the story of Oda Benga, who's this African man who was put on public display in the Bronx Zoo. And I learned about it from a friend years ago, and it intrigued me. He was actually working on a documentary at the time that he was never able to complete. And then a few years ago, wonderful African-American scholar, Pamela Newkirk, Pulitzer Prize winning author, wrote a new book about Otabanga that I read. She's at New York University, and that further inspired me. And so I have a long-term interest in the use and abuse of science, particularly social Darwinism. And so this played into that. And so the film tells the stories about human zoos, and then it interweaves the story about eugenics, which was the scientific crusade to breed a better race. And so I wrote a book actually about social Darwinism a few years ago, and so they all sort of came together on this.
But you're a political scientist by training.
Yep.
So how did you get into this?
Well, that's just an interesting thing. I think as a political scientist, I'm interested in how non-political things impact the real world. And so particularly science. Science is a great thing. I mean, use my iPhone, I use my computer, and it's been a great blessing. But scientists and expert knowledge can be abused just like religion can be abused, just like political ideologies can be abused. And so I've always had that interest of that expert knowledge of, thus says science, therefore we should do it. Well, what happens if that goes awry? And what can we learn from history? I love history. So
to be clear for the audience, this tells a story of the American eugenics movement. A movement in the early 1900s that worked to breed the best and the brightest by race. Yeah. So when you talk about, I know that Otabanga is sort of one part of the story, but obviously your research has covered eugenics in a larger way. What would you say are sort of the most significant events in history, in American history around this? I mean, what do people need to know about the eugenics movement in America?
Well, the eugenics movement took place for decades, and it was the consensus view of science. It was promoted by politicians and other people, but it was primarily sold as a scientific crusade. So the leading scientists at Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Columbia, American Association for the Advancement of Science, they said, we need to do this because, actually, they gave a Darwinian justification. They said, the way we got the way we are is through survival of the fittest, but we are counteracting the law of survival of the fittest by helping save the poor, save the sick. So we either could go back to the law of the jungle, which they didn't want to do because they said, just like Darwin himself was a kindly man in some of his thoughts, or we could reinstitute it compassionately by trying to mimic natural selection artificially by choosing the best, and particularly the real focus, the really sinister part of eugenics. I mean, there are many sinister parts, but the particularly was getting rid of those they thought were unfit or lower stages of evolution, or you name it, biologically inferior.
Right. And so eugenics had implications beyond just the issue of race. They obviously also were sterilizing people who were of European descent because they felt that they would have children that were ignorant or
correct or feeble-minded, and just to understand that the racists of the time were racist against non-whites. They were racist against many whites too. So my grandparents came in just before the eugenics-based immigration bill was passed in the 1920s. They came from Eastern Europe. And if you read a book like Madison Grant, one of the people actually behind what happened to Otabanga in the Bronx Zoo, he didn't like the Slavs either because they were lower on the rung of whites. And so we had to keep them out because they degrade our gene pool.
Dr. Davis, this is not unfamiliar in American history. I mean, this is not an anomaly. This kind of scientific, sociological, these kinds of justifications have existed all throughout American history. Why don't you speak a little bit about sort of how America kind of developed this concept of either race or this concept or this justification for inequality? I know you've done a lot of work around the transatlantic slave trade, and I want you to speak a little about sort of the connection with what you do.
Yeah, well, what we know is that there were several reasons why Africans in particular were primarily chosen or overwhelmingly selected to be chattel slaves, right? But what we know is that the justification for the continuance of taking Africans and making them slaves was based on these beliefs of intellectual inferiority, subhuman characteristics and whatnot. There were reasons for this, several reasons, but one in particular was religion, right? It was this idea that African people didn't believe in Christ. They had these indigenous belief systems or these devil-like religions, right? So they didn't look like the depiction of Jesus. They didn't practice that religion, so they were outside of God's grace. Therefore, that was more of a reason for whites to believe they were superior. So we can take these people that are outside of the eyes of God anyway, they're doomed to eternal fire, if you will, and we can do what we want with them. So that continued to justify that treatment, that ill, horrible, inhumane treatment of these people. The eugenics, people that believe in eugenics were just another example of that. But if we look at scientific racism, it hasn't really went away. Actually, a book, The Bell Curve, in the 90s, right? This book was essentially continuing that same train of thought. This was being taught on college campuses 20 years ago, right? I don't remember the gentleman's name, but I was looking at a YouTube video weeks ago where there was a guy coming back with this idea that the African head was smaller, therefore their brain capacity was smaller. We even know that some assessment tests, particularly in Florida, they were trying to lower the expectation for Black students on assessments. 74% was proficiency for Blacks, like 88% for whites, 90% for Asians.
Wow.
And just because this expectation that we can do as well because we're not as smart. So this has a long history and it's still here.
So your work has hit these contemporary issues as well. What else is happening today around?
Yeah, sure. I think that part of it, the so-called alt-right, the ideology, if you actually read what the awful things that they're saying, they actually are resurrecting really explicitly some of these Darwinian biological arguments that were made 100 years ago. And fortunately, I think a lot of the mainstream science has rejected that, but you still find people, I mean, James Watson, just a few years ago, the co-discoverer, with Francis Crick of the structure of DNA, was making argument in a book that natural selection acts differently on different populations, so why should we expect races to be equal in their capacities? And he particularly said this with regard to African Blacks. He said, why should we expect them to be equal to whites, and said that they weren't. And he's a Nobel laureate, so these things do go on. I would say one thing with regard to religion, which I certainly do agree that there are people who made Christian arguments on behalf of racism, but I also say that, and one of the things covered in the film is that the core teachings, I believe, of Christianity, of going back to all people created in the image of God, and certainly the teachings of Jesus himself of loving everyone, was also a powerful inspiration to most of the people in the anti-slavery movement. And when it came to the story I told, like Ota Benga, it wasn't the scientist in New York, it wasn't the Democratic mayor, it wasn't the New York Times, all of whom were perfectly fine with putting this African man on display in a cage with monkeys. It was a white Baptist minister and then African-American clergy, one of which actually someone in right here played.
Yes. I didn't mention that. But,
very well too. Very
I appreciate it. Thank you. If you go watch the film, you might see the scruffy looking guy.
A very handsome guy, very eloquent.
Yes. I appreciate that very much. But I also appreciate the opportunity to work with you because I think it's a very important project. And as someone who works in the arts and in academia, I find myself desiring to work on projects like that really have some meaning and some substance. So I'm grateful to be a part of it. But I want to ask you, because you brought up this religion question, which I think is a huge, huge issue around this. And I want to speak and ask you about this, because I know we're going to have this conversation a little deeper in a few moments, but Darwin's theory of evolution, okay? The Darwinian theory of evolution. Is that at the heart of the problem, or is this an issue of Darwin's theory being manipulated and abused? So can you separate sort of social Darwinism from Darwin's theory?
That is a fascinating question. And if you'd asked me that 20 years ago, I would have said, yes, of course you can. This was just being Darwin's theory misinterpreted. But then I actually read Darwin's second major big book, The Descent of Man, where he himself actually lays the groundwork for what became eugenics. He actually laments that we're inoculating people against smallpox, we're saving the poor, saving the sick, saving people that natural selection would have killed off. And he said, this is going to destroy us. Now, he then sort of hemmed and hawed, well, we're compassionate, so we can't really do this, and so talked out of both sides of his mouth, but it's there. And his racial scheme, yes, there were lots of racists. Darwin was not the first scientific racist by any means, but the way he built his theory of saying that our fundamental capacities as humans was basically sort of an accidental process based on the particular subgroup you were in and the population pressures. He set up a thing why we should expect there to be significant differences between different people groups. And that laid a groundwork for a lot of, the founder of eugenics, who was one of the leading biologists in America, Charlie Davenport, he took this to he spent his life trying to prove racial inferiority. And he got this from this Darwinian mindset. And so it was the leading scientist. So I think you certainly can believe in evolution without being a racist. There's a fairly close connection, both historically, both in Darwin himself, both in his most eloquent expositors, of something that ties to social Darwinism, certainly the survival of the fittest, and certainly the idea that, that Darwin himself advocated that Africans and the Aboriginal in Australia were the closest human beings to apes, in his view. And that idea of this hierarchy of which there were views of that before, but in his theory, he added the scientific gloss, and because his theory was so persuasive to so many people, those ideas ended up having a lot of impact. So I think, it's not a necessary connection. I think it is a logical connection, and certainly historically, that is how many leading scientists. For me, that's actually the biggest thing that I hope that people. One of the big takeaways from this is that not just can religious believers can be zealous and hypocritical and do bad things, and political people can.
Sure.
But even the so-called best and brightest of the scientists, and so when people say, whether it be God says this, therefore you have to do it, or science says this with a capital S, therefore you can't even ask any questions, that really isn't great for a free society. It's not great for. It really leads into the sort of tyranny, because I think we're all fallible, and that's just not a good thing. And I think this is a case study of that.
Absolutely. We have to take a break. You guys are watching Change with Ted Williams. We'll be back in just a moment.
The placing of the boy in the cage with the monkey is an outrage. The Negro race in America has a hard enough time as it is in getting away from the prejudice that is closely related to the monkey without having a member of the race placed on exhibition.
Leading men of science from Harvard and Princeton and Columbia University were saying that Africans were midway between an orangutan and a human being. So 100 years later, it should not come as much of a surprise that many people still cling to these notions of European superiority, African inferiority.
And that was a clip from the film Human Zoos. Dr. Davis, I want to ask you about how this notion of racial inferiority was promoted by American public policy through the times of slavery in the United States to Jim Crow segregation. This work was not just academic, but people took this justification scientifically and they created public policy from it. And it was very damaging. And I want you to speak for a few moments about that.
Right, absolutely. So again, slavery was obviously justified by this belief in the inferiority of Black people or African people or its descendants, right? But then moving into Jim Crow, which was after slavery for about 100 years roughly, we know that this was legalized oppression, legalized segregation based in the same belief in the subhuman characteristics of African people. Therefore, they were a little less citizen because they were a little less human. We know that this went on. Imagine seeing a white only or a colored only sign, how that not only or increases the belief of white people in their superiority, but simultaneously it's telling Black people constantly that they're not good enough, that there's something not quite right with them. Add to that being geographically located in the poorest communities. So you look around and it's run down and your schools don't have this or that. And so Black people are constantly hearing that they're not good enough or that they're second class. And then they look around, not understanding all the factors that have contributed to their space or station in the country. And it's kind of reaffirming this belief, like maybe something is quite not right with us.
Yeah, I would imagine that, and I think about this a lot, but not just for people who are non-African American, sort of see the conditions of African American people or other minorities and go, my goodness, these people must not work hard, they must be lazy.
Exactly.
But I would imagine, I've seen it and heard it from other African Americans who accept the same level of inferiority based on the conditions that they see.
Absolutely. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? I'm going to tell you that you're nothing. I'm going to take all your resources away from you so that you are failing, and then say, see, I told you are nothing, right? And in my courses, I'm constantly talking to my students about when we talk about history and the conditions of African Americans, I always say this class is not going to be about bashing white people. We're going to talk about what happened in white America to influence us. But I'm more concerned with what's going on with the Black psyche. How much of this nonsense, this white supremacy have we absorbed? How much of it do we now believe? And how is that hurting us from progressing? And the things in this film, it was an amazing film. This scientific racism is at the core of this self-hatred that I feel many African Americans suffer from today. And I think that is arguably just as impactful or just as stifling to our progression as current white supremacy and oppression and inequality.
You know, I was talking to someone yesterday from an immigrant community, from a African immigrant community, and they were talking about how, unlike African Americans, this particular community did not feel any real need to push for political power in America. And they were asking, well, why do African Americans feel so much that they need to do this? And I would imagine that African Americans look at the same documents that other Americans look at.
Right.
You know, all men are created equal. And they see these things and they go, you know, we may be better off than some third world country here in America as minorities, but I'm looking at what it says on paper. Thomas Jefferson himself, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, also wrote a book called Notes on the State of Virginia, in which he basically argued that Africans were inferior. I want to ask you, what is the connection between Jefferson and the work in eugenics that you've talked about? Is there an overt connection? Was Jefferson, well, actually, obviously Jefferson predates the eugenics movement, but I would imagine because Jefferson was the first major American to write explicitly about this notion of inferiority, there's a strand that's running through. Is there any of your work that kind of touches on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, Jefferson is an interesting example because he recognized that slavery was wrong, but he was a slaveholder, and then he wrote, you're right, I've read the Notes on the State of Virginia, very demeaning. What's interesting in this area of religion is that although there were certainly Christian justifications in the South of slavery, when that Notes on the State of Virginia came out, I think Samuel Stanhope Smith, president of Princeton, and others actually attacked Jefferson on that, citing Acts 17 and that the idea that the King James Version, where it says of one blood God made everyone, he said Jefferson, the infidel, is going against that, and that this is completely wrong. And so he actually did get some pushback at the time because the debate was beginning to start in America with Quakers and others who were anti-slavery. But I'd say the connection, there is a bit of a connection. So Jefferson was very much smitten with secular progress, and that human beings would, he thought the French Revolution was great until it sort of lots of other things happened. And so I think behind some of this social Darwinism was this sort of human perfectionism that, well, now we're the best and brightest, so we can engineer the perfect society on earth, and we'll do it using this presumption of scientific racism. And what Daniel was talking about earlier about like IQ testing and things, that was engineered by the same people who brought you eugenics. I mean, it's historically very true. And then in the African American community, I mean, this may be controversial to say, but Margaret Sanger. Oh yeah. I'm not against birth control. I'm not against birth control, but Margaret Sanger was not an exemplary figure, and she, among other places, went and lectured to the Ku Klux Klan. And why? Well, because she had she had these exact same views. If you actually read her books, she thought blacks were inferior. It was for this Darwinian scientific racism. She thought immigrants were, a drag on things, and she, this goes deep.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. It's also important to note, though, because I agree with you, the religious or faith-based community certainly played a role in anti-slavery activism, right? But remember, there's a difference too between being you can be anti-slavery and anti-black at the same time. So what we know about a lot of even the Quakers, right? We know about a lot of these religious figures that fought to end slavery still didn't want a black man dating their daughter.
Correct. And many of them
we see a lot of that today.
Ship back to Africa. That was their thing.
100%.
I agree with that.
So they can simultaneously say slavery is wrong for everybody, but still these people are inferior beings, and they still don't quite deserve the same rights that we deserve. And we have myriad evidence of that too. So but I agree though, absolutely. It's not just that religion played a role in the beginning of slavery and the foundation or the groundwork for racism. It also did help fight against these things, absolutely. So I just wanted to make sure it's a nuance.
That's very, very important. So not that we're at the end of the program, but I do want to continue to move sort of in this contemporary space. Obviously, we see how the movement of the alt-right and other groups like that have really, I think, revived some of these conversations. But I really want to know, what do we need to do, right? What do we need to do educationally? What do we need to do socially, politically to reverse what it is that we're talking about now?
Watch his film. We need more films like this.
I really think one part of it is if you don't know the past, you can't see the same things happening as easily, or you dismiss it. And so I think that's sort of negative, but I think forewarned is forearmed. Once you see it, then you can recognize the same things today. And then there are lots of positive things that science has brought out about, our DNA is the same. We're one human race. And so there are things, so this is not anti-science, but I think, people do need to understand what happened in the past so that they can see and be warned about things today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said it jokingly, but seriously, films like yours, right? Spreading this information, shockingly, a lot of people don't fully understand or really give enough respect to how much energy was put into dividing us in this country. So the first step is to become aware and then have dialogues, have conversations. Even in the African-American community, understandably so, a lot of us are angry about the inequality and the racism and the unfair treatment that we experience. But at the same time, we have to be willing to have those conversations with those that are willing to hear us, those that are willing to come to the table and have some kind of understanding, right? But additionally, I think without sounding too negative, right, or pessimistic, I think African Americans, we have to stop waiting for white America to correct itself. Right, we have to continue to push ourselves forward and do what we have to do in spite of what's going on. In my class, I always say we're talking about all these horrible things that happen, but I always say, now what? Right, every time. Okay, so we had 50 minutes talking about all these horrible things. We end the class with now what? What are we going to do now? What's the next step? And it's on us. You can write letters to your congressman and all these people all you want, but we have a lot of evidence that says that moves very slowly. And oftentimes it doesn't get the results we need. So how can we become self-reliant in our communities? What can we do within ourselves, within our families, and our block to make our lives better? And then we can also come to the table to try to have this racial harmony that we all think is necessary.
Speaking, very well said. Thank you, sir. That was speaking of learning history, what has been the reaction to your film?
That's interesting. I think a lot positive, a lot of people shocked they didn't know about it, especially in the white community, right, shown it. There have been some things that have shocked me because I have had some people push back who are really from the racist perspective and actually criticizing, why are you inflaming this and how dare you? There was one review on Amazon that was quite, I mean, it was shocking to me, but I mean, it wasn't, I mean, I know those people are out there, but I've gotten some pushback in that way too.
People who don't want you to tell the story, people who don't believe the story.
A combination of, they think telling the story will inflame things. I do understand that, it's not, we want to get to a society where all people are valued and all people can flourish. And so I understand, some concerns about, rage that might be counterproductive. But then there's also some of the beliefs, well, but people are different, as in there are racial inferiorities. And there have been some people who have said that. Not many, but enough that it really bothers some.
Well, it's interesting. This is our second time having this conversation. We were able to do this for a group of college students yesterday, actually, in the City Colleges of Chicago. And part of our discussion then got into the idea of race.
Also, some of the beliefs, but people are different.
And we haven't spent a lot of time talking
there are racial inferiorities, and there have been some people who said that. Not many, but enough that
it is a biological.
It really bothers some.
It's interesting. This is our second time having this conversation. We were able to do this for a group of college students yesterday, actually, in the City College of Chicago. And part of our discussion then got into the idea of race.
Also, some of the beliefs, but people are different. There are racial inferiorities, and there have been some people who said that. Not many, but enough that it really bothers some.
It's interesting. This is our second time having this conversation. We were able to do this for a group of college students yesterday, actually, in the City College of Chicago. And part of our discussion then got into the idea of race.
Also, some of the beliefs, but people are different. There are racial inferiorities, and there have been some people who said that. Not many, but enough that it really bothers some.
It's interesting. This is our second time having this conversation. We were able to do this for a group of college students yesterday, actually, in the City College of Chicago. And part of our discussion then got into the idea of race.
Also, some of the beliefs, but people are different. There are racial inferiorities, and there have been some people who said that. Not many, but enough that it really bothers some.
It's interesting. This is our second time having this conversation. We were able to do this for a group of college students yesterday, actually, in the City College of Chicago. And part of our discussion then got into the idea of race.
Also, some of the beliefs, people are different. There are racial inferiorities, and there have been some people who said that. Not many, but enough that it really bothers some.
It's interesting. This is our second time having this conversation. We were able to do this for a group of college students yesterday, actually, in the City College of Chicago. And part of our discussion then got into the idea of race.
Also, some of the beliefs, people are different. There are racial inferiorities, and there have been some people who said that. Not many, but enough that it really bothers some.
It's interesting. This is our second time having this conversation. We were able to do this for a group of college students yesterday, actually, in the City College of Chicago. And part of our discussion then got into the idea of race.
Also, some of the beliefs, people are different. There are racial inferiorities, and there have been some people who said that. Not many, but enough that
is that top echelon of people that are hurting, that's exploiting everybody. I think that'll happen before we see racial harmony, sadly. And again, I didn't want to be too pessimistic, but just being realistic.
And
I think economic parity and economic understanding will come before universal racial understanding.
Well, that's a.
But we never should stop fighting for it.
That's a different view of utopia, racial harmony. So we'll all be poor together, and then we'll be okay.
Once we're poor together, then we'll start to unite around poor.
And it's funny, and I would imagine, and I think about sort of history, and both of you are historians. In that way, I would suggest that there are a lot of cases in history that show maybe the opposite happens.
Well, that's
maybe tribalism increases when people are struggling. So I don't know. I hope you're right.
I think that's because poor whites are believing the lie of rich whites that they're all on the same team. I think poor white people are still dividing themselves from others because rich whites still have them connecting around whiteness when really they're totally separate.
Well, John, on this panel, you are the expert on white America. So maybe you can answer that question.
I would just say that I think there is another perhaps way to look at it, depending on one's view of economics, that whether that through entrepreneurship and the right sort of economic freedom, not crony capitalism, not where you give favor to monopolies. I think there are downsides to that, but actually economic freedom, when the rules are fair, can lead to everyone flourishing. And whether it be an African American community, and I say, without passing judgment on current things in politics, right now, unemployment among African Americans has gone down significantly. Now, does that mean that's where it needs to be? No, absolutely not. On the other hand, I think it may give a foretaste of if we actually do get to an area with a level playing field of fairness, how, through human initiative, human creativity that is in the spark of everyone, that if you don't have these artificial barriers placed on people, that you will have rather than taking down some people, you'll actually have everyone flourishing. Because I'd say that the history of, say, a socialist approach, I think, to economics has not been good worldwide for leaving flourishing to anyone. So,
well, I hope that we can figure this out. I mean, I do, and I mean that sincerely. It has been the Achilles heel of this country since its inception. I think it'll be this country's downfall if we don't figure out a way to do this. You know, Dr. King had a famous quote that says that unless we learn to live together as brothers, we'll perish together as fools. And that's it in this country. And so I don't know how we get there. I'm always amazed at how little time we spend in the educational process preparing people to live in a diverse society. I think we just assume it's going to happen. And this is a very diverse society. And we wonder why people have these stereotypes, these assumptions. I think we've got to work from the beginning of the educational process to prepare us to live in this space. And so I appreciate the work both of you all do. I thank you all so much for coming. We are out of time today, but this has been a great conversation. Please watch the film Human Zoos. It is amazing. And like I said, there's a little actor you might want to check out in there too, you know, if you get a chance. I hope you enjoy that. But I do hope you support it. And more importantly, I hope that each one of you figures out a way to affect change, not only in your local community, your local life, your neighborhood, your home, but to affect change around the world. And that's really what this show is about. And these conversations are about how can each one of us change our lives and then change the world. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.
But once the credits go off, her call. You're watching Diggler Films.tv. I'm your host, Rashana Baldwin, host of the
What does it mean to be a good neighbor?
It means being there for each other.
And that's why State Farm
Not-for-Profit Showcase is a show that highlights all the great nonprofits around the city of Chicago, the Chicagoland area, who are doing great work in the communities. I wanted to bring in and show you some of the things I got to cover. Tune in now to the Not-for-Profit Showcase. Welcome to the Non-for-Profit Showcase, where we highlight the great work and accomplishments of nonprofits. I am your host, Rashana Baldwin. Our first guest is the Georgia Doty Comprehensive Health, Inc. We have the founder, Don Doty, here today, and he's going to tell us more about the organization. Welcome to the show, Don.
No, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So let's get right into it. Tell me about all the great work that you do with your organization about health and health screenings.
Well, we deal with health disparity within communities of color. We try to educate our people of color on health issues that basically negatively affect them in terms of breast cancer, obesity, nutrition, diet, physical therapy, physical fitness. And we try to educate them from a standpoint of eating different, living different, changing their habits. And we try to test them and create awareness in the community so they become aware of their resources that are available to them.
How long have you been doing this great work?
Well, I'm from Los Angeles. Harold Washington, you're too young to know, but this guy named W. Clement Stone, he was one of the wealthiest Republicans in the state of Illinois. He had a program called PMA, Positive Mental Attitude. And back home, my mother, Georgia Doty, set up the first welfare to work allied health trade school. And so our job was to take women off of welfare during that time. And we did such an excellent job. And we got a $2 million grant. $2 million back in the early 80s was a lot of money for a black family.
Absolutely.
And so it made 60 Minutes. And your mayor, Harold Washington, and this Clement Stone, after my mother died, invited me to come duplicate the school in Chicago. And the school we set up here was called Center for Employment Training. We started it on Holman and Arthington in the old Sears building. West Side, and then we moved over to Lake Street. So for 25 years, we took off about 3,500 individuals on welfare in Chicago.
Wow.
And we taught them areas of allied health. We had pharmaceutical technicians. We had medical billing, respiratory therapy, pulmonary functions, technical health. We had pulmonary functions, and we had other lab kinds of work there that they provide them skills and upward mobility in terms of allied health.
So this is citywide. We can use your services citywide.
The school ended about 3 years ago.
So the school ended 3 years ago.
Yeah, when your Governor Rauner came in and cut my funding,
okay.
Yes, it ended. I was the first minority at United Healthcare in marketing. And I realized then that I had hepatitis C from the air gun in Vietnam, when we all went to Vietnam.
You're a vet.
I'm a vet, Marine Corps.
Thank you for serving our country.
Yeah. And so when I got hepatitis, I wanted to go out and educate others about this issue. And we got federal funding. And so the nonprofit became a whole new lifestyle, new chapter in my life to continue trying to provide these services to others.
Is absolutely needed in our communities, especially
Correct.
Communities of color. So how receptive have Chicagoans been? Have you saved lives? Have you transformed lives?
It's hard to dictate how many lives you saved. We can go by how many lives we educated,
Yes.
how many lives we tested.
How many would you
in
say
Chicago?
today?
Chicago? About 15,000.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's
we've
great.
been doing. We do seminars, we do conferences, we do community outreach programs. We have a national newsletter, and then here at CAN TV, we're on every Tuesday night at 7:30 here on CAN TV. So we've had a lot of vehicles to provide that kind of exposure to create a lot of awareness.
So the seminars, are you going into schools, hospitals, organizations, churches?
We work basically with the faith-based community.
Absolutely.
And we do a lot with the churches and within the churches. We work within the health department, the health agencies, and the general public.
So the current organization is the Georgia Doty Comprehensive Health Inc.
Yeah, it's not easier. Our last name was Georgia Doty HIV Hepatitis Community Outreach.
Mm-hmm.
I would forget that sometime. So Georgia Doty Comprehensive Health kind of puts everything together for me. Yeah.
So it's pretty much everything related to health and educating individuals on being healthy, screenings, testings. And what are some of your events that you do yearly?
Well, yearly we do the obesity nutrition, and we try to pick up 300 women that are receiving, and men who are receiving link cards. They are not really educated on how to shop and how to use that link card. They misuse that link card.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know the importance of vegetables and fruits to be able to.
Why is that?
Lack of education. That's where education comes in at. Then we do our annual domestic violence, which is a mental health issue that we've dealt with. And we've been very successful in holding it at the Kroc Center on a yearly basis. And then we do our veterans program, being a vet. And we try to educate the vets on the benefits and the resources that are available to them. Basically, we focus on the homeless veterans and try to bring them back into the system, try to provide them housing and testing and screening, and educate them on the benefits that they may have available to them and back into the system. And then we put on various programs dealing with HIV, hepatitis on an ongoing basis.
Do you feel that you have a large body of support from the faith-based communities?
We've had major support from overall the faith-based, the corporate, here in Chicago. We've had a lot of support. We've reached a lot of people, and I have a beautiful staff that have really kind of come together, and as Rochester and other people have volunteered for the last 15 years with me. So I've kept the same crew for a long period of time.
To say that you educated and screened over 15,000 people, that's amazing.
Well, a lot of time we subcontract agencies that do the testing and the screening for us, so that we don't have to have the lack of the certified technicians required to be registered as phlebotomists and testers. So
in the communities that you serve, do you see any changes? Do you see more individuals caring more about their health now?
They're caring more about their health, but the major issue that I find in Chicago now is PTSD, mental health. Yeah. I think because of the urban violence and the killing and the drama here in Chicago, many people are dealing with PTSD and don't realize they're dealing with it. but they're dealing with a lot of mental health issues. And because of the cutback in mental health funding in the state of Illinois, it's more prevalent that you see this undetected. When I first became marketing director, I did a research on Chicago housing, the projects.
Yes.
And many of those buildings were had a lot of lead in the paint and in the building itself. And the lead led to a lot of problems in terms of learning and education in those that lived in it at that period of time. And lead has been a very serious issue in the housing authority.
Don Doty, I want to thank you so much. Before we go, how can individuals get in contact with you, contribute, support you? What is the best way?
To go to our website and see our history is www.georgiadotyinc.org.
Thank you so much. You guys tune in to the Nonprofit Showcase. We'll be right back.
We have two big needs. First of all, of course, is physical health, but also spiritual health. And that's exactly what this organization is doing. It has been doing for so many years, and I'm happy to be a part of it, and I hope to remain a part of it. And I'm very proud of Don for having stuck with it, because he's had a lot of challenges, but he's managed to keep himself together.
There's no greater work one can do than to promote good health and health care. I don't care how wealthy you are. I don't care how accomplished you are. I don't care how much money you got. If you are sick, you're not in good shape. I commend Don Doty for doing it. And Don has been the main educator in the state of Illinois, pushing the issue of hepatitis and the issue of HIV and AIDS, and has helped to educate thousands and thousands and thousands of people so that they know how to better protect themselves.
Don is a pillar of the community. I have worked in Congress to support your efforts. I have spent my career in Congress working to serve the communities I represent and to protect the least among us. I look forward to continuing that work.
Welcome to the Non-For-Profit Showcase, where we highlight the great work and accomplishments of non-for-profits. I'm your host, Roshana Baldwin. Our next organization is Sisters Working It Out. We have the CEO, Beulah Brent, and board member Nadine Willis here today, and they're going to tell us more about their organization. Welcome, Nadine and Beulah.
Thank you.
So tell us about Sisters Working It Out, about the mission, and how did that name come about?
Well, actually, we started in 2001. It was founded by Dr. Monica Peak, who was a young doctor who worked at Rush Presbyterian Hospital. And at that time, I was the manager at Stroger Hospital. So we was doing research on the disparity in the African American community. So we actually started working within the community, especially on the West Side at that time, and working with other communities, especially African Americans and other minority women. We decided to form an organization, and we came up with the name, Sisters Working It Out, mainly because we was working in all the other communities and working with underserved women in the community.
I absolutely love that name. That's how you get people's attention and educate them. So, Nadine, tell us, how are you guys educating women on breast cancer?
Well, we primarily work with a lot of organizations in the Chicagoland area. We attend a lot of health fairs. We go into churches and any organization that's open to having us come in to talk to the women in their congregations or in their organizations. We also focus on the family. We want men and, the sons and daughters to understand, what's going on relative to their wives or their mom's health, so they can encourage them to get their mammograms and to get their checkups to make sure that they remain healthy for their families.
How do you remove the stigma and the negativity associated with breast cancer of those who may be fearful of wanting to even get screened?
Well, as a person who has survived breast cancer, I call myself a more than conqueror through Christ Jesus.
Say that again?
A more than conqueror.
A more than conqueror.
Through
I love
Christ
that.
Jesus. So anyway, what I'm able to do is first explain to people that just because you've been diagnosed with breast cancer doesn't mean that's a death sentence. What's really important is to get treatment, to follow the regimen or whatever the care or whatever the doctors recommend. You can look at that. And so I decided to have the radical mastectomy of the right breast. And that was really because Beulah brought the mammogram bust to church, that I found out that there was an issue. So we've been rolling together ever since.
So wait a minute, because of her bringing the mammogram bust to church, you found out.
Yes.
Wow.
So after I went through everything, through the chemo, through the radiation, through having my breast removed and lymphedema, losing the hair and all of that, I started to work with Beulah. And my husband was really grateful for her, what the organization was doing. Actually, he was probably more gung-ho about me working with you with him himself working with you and being an advocate than I was at that time. But I saw the vision. I saw both of you, because what you're trying to do when you're going through it, you're really trying to get through it as quickly as possible.
Right.
You're not trying to linger. You really want this over with as soon as possible.
What type of support and services do you provide to the women who come to the organization for your assistance?
So we actually recently started a support group, actually located at Mile Square Health Center at 640 in Inglewood.
Okay.
So we found out there were some issues in Inglewood, because what we look at is the high disparity rate in those communities. And actually Inglewood is second in line to Roseland. So we're trying to find target areas where women actually need our help. So we are in that neighborhood, giving them support on what it is that they should be doing. So we actually go to the hospital with them.
Wow.
So if they need our assistance, one of the things we say that we do believe in going and listen to our doctors, but what we tell women all the time is you're your best advocate.
Yes.
So sometimes, doctors are human just like we are. So you have to sometimes insist on making sure that the doctor hear what you have to say about your health. So we figure the more you know, the better you'll do. So we navigate the women through the system. We work with the University right now of Illinois in Chicago, where we actually help women get free mammograms.
Wow.
So
I was just about to ask that individuals may not have, health care. So you help to facilitate them getting it for free.
We do.
The mammogram testing.
So we do. We help get the mammogram free at the University of Illinois. We also have a relationship with Access Community Health Network, where if a woman don't have insurance or she doesn't have a PCP, which is a physician, we actually navigate them through the system to hook them up with a doctor that they can call their own.
And what age should individuals start getting screened?
So right now, the guidelines, according to American Cancer Society, is age 40. Well, as we know, young women, 40 and younger, especially African American women, they're in the category of developing breast cancer earlier than their counterparts. So more often than white women. So basically, we go by the guideline, but one of the things you want to look at is a breast history. Right. Wanted to make sure that there's no family history of breast cancer. Yes. So if there, then it's always 10 years prior to when mom or auntie has been diagnosed with breast cancer.
And with all this great research and all this great support that you are offering, what else are you guys doing throughout the year?
So we usually do a lot of health fairs. Okay. We just actually had our Day of Beauty. Mm-hmm. So what we do is actually do a Day of Beauty for all cancer survivors. That's and amazing. At that Day of Beauty, we actually give out free wigs. Mm-hmm. They have to be new wigs. Mm-hmm. So we give them makeup, haircuts. Everything to them is free. We give out raffles. So
and a lunch, beautiful luncheon.
Okay. Yeah. And when you guys have an annual gala, tell me more about that. And when is that?
That's normally in September. Okay. And it's one of our major fundraisers. So everyone gets dressed up. And typically what we do is we showcase some women or even men who have been diagnosed with breast cancer. And they come to our organization. And that evening we have them speak. And all of our supporters are there basically to we thank them, and then we encourage them to continue to give to us so we can continue to do the work that we do. As a not-for-profit organization, we do rely on donations from benevolent individuals. Absolutely. And so we're always looking for ways for
people to get involved. Yeah. People volunteer with you.
Speaking of which,
yes. Definitely looking for volunteers. Mm-hmm. Basically, this organization is 100% volunteer. Mm-hmm. So what we do out of love that we have for women and the love that we have for our community. Mm-hmm. So, if you know anybody who would love to volunteer, they can always reach out to us and find out what it is that they want to do or they like to do. So volunteers are always welcome.
And they will go to your website.
They will go to our website at www.sistersworkingitout.org.
I love that name. You told me earlier that you guys do this fun fundraiser bowling.
Yes, we bowl. I went for the first time in April, and it was a lot of fun. And it's a major fundraiser that we have, and we invite our supporters, any survivors, and just people who are interested in helping our cause out. It's just a great night. We basically take over a bowling alley, and we just have a night of fun.
And that's usually in what month?
That's in April.
So it's the fourth Saturday of each year in April. Mm-hmm. And at the in Tinley Park, Centennial Lane in Tinley Park.
So 17 years in the business, are you guys looking to hope to be the first ones to discover the cure to breast cancer?
Absolutely.
That's a thought.
I always tell them we're going to be the next Susan G. Komen.
I want to thank you guys so much. Sisters Working It Out. One more time, how can individuals get in contact with you to donate or support?
So they can go to our website at www.sistersworkingitout.org, or they can call us at 312-572-3053.
Thank you so much, ladies. Keep up the good work. Thank you. You've been watching the Nonprofit Showcase. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Sheila Harmon. I am a board member with Sisters Working It Out, and we just want to thank you for coming out and helping us celebrate Day of Beauty. We celebrated survivors. We were able to give them manicures. They got their hair done, their makeup done. They got great information, and so we are excited about another day to celebrate our survivors.
Hi, my name is Vera Carr. I'm a cancer survivor, 2 breast cancers, and this has been such a wonderful event.
I love this event. I love to see the women come out and just the things that we have here to add beauty. It does such uplift to a woman's spirit when she feels beautiful.
I thank God for using these ladies that with gifted hands and just gave me a new look, and I just feel like a brand new woman.
It's just absolutely
awesome place to come. There are plenty of resources here for the ladies if they're having problems with health care, if they want information about their cancer, or just any type of feedback from other survivors. This is the place that I would definitely recommend for next year.
My name is Javante Tucker. I came to Sisters Working It Out because, one, everybody needs a little bit of fitness in their life. It's hard to kind of incorporate fitness, the right eating, and just bring your life together as a whole. So today I was very excited to help out the sisters here, and I just want to show them like fitness should be a part of everybody's life.
Hello, I'm Sharon Vaughn, and I'm also a board member with Sisters Working It Out. And to God be the glory for the things He has done. So many survivors came out, manicures, pedicures, testimony, powerful survivor stories, because God is good and all the time.
Hello, I'm Ronisha Prakwinkle. I'm at the Sisters Working It Out Day of Beauty event. I think it is absolutely fabulous. I've learned so much. I've met so many different women. I love the way they have so many events for the women, whether it's getting their hair done, getting their makeup done, or just learning detailed information from different vendors. It's been fabulous, and I can't wait to come back for next year.
Just having a great time today celebrating women of color. We rarely get recognized. Love that we're spotlighting survivors of cancer, but all are welcome. This is just a day of collaborating and showing love and expressing love and just enjoying life.
First of all, I want to say thank God for what it is that He's doing for us. I thank everybody for being here today. I think it was really incredible. This is just the beginning of us moving forward. So God is good. We had an amazing time, and I hope everybody enjoyed what they got here today. So thank you so much for everyone that supported us, and we are so blessed to have you as a part of our team. God bless
Welcome to the Non-for-Profit Showcase, where we highlight the great work and accomplishments of nonprofits. I'm your host, Rashana Baldwin, and our next organization is Girls Like Me Project. We have the CEO and founder, Lakeisha Gray Sewell, here today, and she's going to tell us more about the organization. Welcome to the show, Lakeisha.
Thank you for having me.
So you are doing all things good in the neighborhood, good in Inglewood. Tell us about Girls Like Me Project.
Well, Girls Like Me Project is an organization I started in 2012 after years of volunteering in my son's classroom and noticing that the girls in the classroom were mimicking this bad girl behavior that they've been seeing in reality TV and so on and so forth. And so we started doing these ladies' luncheons, and it just grew into something that was demanding a lot of my time. And so I went and started an actual organization, and it really just helps them to understand media literacy, to break down the negative media messages that are targeted to them, that normalize violence, normalizes violence, poverty, and that just have them pitted against each other. And so we train them media literacy and also how to do their own digital storytelling. So they learn how to be global influencers by just sharing their stories through podcasting, blogs, video, things of that nature.
So you teaching them how to be the author of their own narrative, pretty much.
To navigate girlhood on their own terms and to share their own story so that it's not influenced by what the media tells them that they can be or should be.
What ages are you working with, and are you inside the school?
Yeah, so we work with girls as early as 10, and we're seeing now that we need to go even earlier. But right now it's 10 to 18 years old. We have partnerships with local schools, Donahue Charter School, as well as Carter G. Woodson Charter School, both University of Chicago charter schools. And then we also do our larger programming, which is open to everyone. And we have a summer program that is also open. You can go to any school and just come for the whole summer.
And is there a cap on how many girls that you take? Are you trying to save the entire Chicago? So, I mean, it's a lot. So how is it a cap?
So the good thing is that we are not the only organization.
Okay.
There's so many different organizations service girls in different areas. Us for media literacy, our summer programs, we take up to 20 girls per session. Even when we're in schools, we take up to 20 girls. However, our events, which are free, we don't have a limit. So our Chicago Day of the Girls, which we just celebrated the 7th year, we get anywhere up to 300 girls to attend that event in one day.
And what does that look like? What do you guys do on that day?
So it's a local celebration of International Day of the Girl, which the UN had established. And so what we do is we expose girls to global sisterhood. It's a day of advocacy for them, a day of education for them, and it's also a day for them to understand that the issues they face in Chicago are identical to the issues that girls are facing in Sri Lanka or Ghana or Nigeria. So whether it be education disparity, if it's gender violence, all of those things that we see on an international face, our girls are facing right here in Chicago.
Absolutely. So thank you for joining us. How can our viewers get in contact with you, donate, volunteer? Girls Like Me.
Organization is Girls Like Me Project.org. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well.
Thank you, Lakeisha, for doing such great work. We'll be right back. I'm your host, Rashonda Baldwin of the Nonprofit Showcase. Follow us on all the social medias, Nonprofit Showcase, and check your local listings for our next airing time. Welcome back. You are watching Diggler Films.tv. I'm Rashonda Baldwin. Up next, we have the Doty Report. The Doty Report highlights and promotes health awareness. It brings about education on health disparities. So tune in now to the Doty Report.
Good evening. This is the Georgia Doty Community Outreach Program with the Doty Report on Comprehensive Health. My name is Beverly Walker, and I am your host tonight. I want to say hello to Mr. Doty, who is probably watching the show tonight. And I also want to say hello to our original host, Miss Yolanda Givens, who is out ill. We want to wish her a speedy recovery and hope that she can come back as soon as possible. Meanwhile, I am filling in for her. And we have with us tonight as our guest, Dr. Frank Vault Jr., and he is a chiropractor, inspirational speaker. He is a veteran of 8 years. He spent time in the Army, doing hospital medical nutrition, and he is the founder and owner of Health on Earth Wellness Center. He resides in Chicago with his wife and 2 daughters. His hobbies are traveling, mission trips, and running. He has also authored a book titled Achieve the 5P Process, and he has also ran a half marathon in 2015. Welcome, Dr. Vault.
Thank you. That's a lot of information there, huh?
Well, you sent it to us. I didn't make it up, and I didn't write it. It was a lot, and I just took that little bit out of it because it seemed kind of interesting.
Oh, thank you.
But to start off, I see you have a spine there.
Yes. I keep mine with me, and I keep my motto as well.
Well, I don't know if mine look like that, but
we got some work to do there.
First thing I want to ask you is, you're the founder and owner of Health on Earth Wellness Center.
Yes.
What does that mean? What do you do there?
Well, Health on Earth Wellness Center, we're a wellness center. We do chiropractic care and physical rehabilitation. We also have acupuncture, massage, and but the biggest thing we do is we support people in having a body that functions, number one, without drugs or surgery. And so people come to us with like severe pain, aches, and we help them without taking a surgical route or without having to take the medication.
Okay, well, that sounds like something I might need. And a lot of other people that I know.
Yeah.
I do want to say as we get started, we have our call-in number, 312-738-1060. It's kind of hard to read. Look kind of fuzzy. But hopefully our guests that are viewing the show tonight will call in and ask some questions. I know a lot of people nowadays are suffering with arthritic problems.
Oh, yes.
The knees hurt, the back hurt, the shoulders hurt. I have a cousin that just had shoulder surgery, got to have it again. I've had quite a bit of hip surgery myself. So I know what it's like to have these problems. So why don't you tell us what it is that you do when people come in and to see you?
Well, and that's a great question. It's every single person is different. When you come into and get a chiropractic examination at Health on Earth, one of the things we start off with is a detailed history of really looking at you, looking at lifestyle, looking at the things you do, the things you're involved in, and then we look at the particular health problem, crisis that's going on or that you're involved in, and we put together an approach as far as to correct it. Now, we don't have a cookie cutter approach because we support your body in having exactly what it needs, whether it be lack of nutrition, whether it be looking at the nervous system, which is the biggest thing that really helps facilitate the body and heal it. One of the cool things about chiropractic is anybody and everybody can benefit because your nervous system is what controls the entirety of your whole body, and it coordinates everything. So by us having this nervous system nice and clear, making sure that that each one of these pathways of each one of these nerves is actually going to its organ, cell, or tissue, its muscle, without any obstruction, which is called a subluxation. The body heals tremendously, and it's an amazing thing. So as doctors of chiropractic, the biggest thing we do is support the body in its proper function because we literally design to heal ourselves. So it's amazing some of the things that we get to see.
Can you got those little things sticking out there?
Sticking out over here.
Most people don't really see that close up.
Right, absolutely.
So can you tell us about what all that is?
Well, right here.
I see we have a caller already.
Oh, definitely. So we'll take that or answer this. We'll go with that.
Caller, do you have a comment or question?
Actually, I had a question. Nice to meet you, Dr. Ball.
Oh, nice to meet you there. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Actually, my friend had referred me to you a number of times.
Okay.
She has some headaches as well as sciatica. She went to several doctors from childhood up until adulthood, undergone some surgeries, nothing could help. She started going to your office, and she got better and better. And that's all she goes on and on about. Oh, go down to Crestpoint, visit Dr. Ball, visit Dr. Ball. what did you do to get rid of the headaches and sciatica? Because I thought a chiropractor takes care of back pain.
And and that's a great question, young lady. Well, what I did with the, and I don't know which particular practice member we're talking about, but oftentimes, like we were talking about just a moment ago, when you have misalignments in the vertebrae, oftentimes with headaches, it's upper cervical, which is in your neck. And when you have misalignments there, they put compression on these nerves. Okay. What we began to do is we did an exam, we looked at lifestyle, and we took pictures of her spine. Now, when we took pictures of the spine and we looked at it, we saw misalignments. These misalignments are called subluxations. By removing the subluxations, we were able to actually restore the body's proper biomechanics, and then as well as nerve transmission. So the brain and body were able to communicate so much easier, and her body then was able to be restored, and they stopped. Oftentimes, too, things like the high blood pressure comes because of that, and it comes down. Now with the sciatica, that sciatic nerve actually exits out down here, these last two vertebrae down here, and she was just talking about those squiggly little worms. Well, these nerves that actually exit out, I want to see if you can get a good picture of these nerves on it. Well, they exit out right over here. Now they come together and they go down the leg. And oftentimes that sciatica can be debilitating. I'm talking about my pregnant patients. I'm talking about my patients that do a lot of sitting, or people that are on their feet standing on hard surfaces a lot. They get that sciatica. When we removed that interference, what it did was it really helped. It really helped take that pressure off the nerve, and then her health was restored.
Okay, so I guess that answered her question. Seems as though we have another caller. Caller, you have a comment or a question?
Yes, I was asking Doc because after he explained about the sciatica, we do sit a lot at our desk. So I wanted to know, she told me you guys were in Crestwood, but you're moving.
Oh yes, we we definitely are moving. We have a facility now in Crestwood, Illinois, and we're moving to Alsop, and it's we're actually moving to a larger facility to actually be able to serve more people. We'll be adding, in addition, spinal decompression, acupuncture. Of course, it's going to be massage, and we're going to have a community health room, to where we'll be having constant workshops and lectures and things like that on health and wellness, and it's going to be for the community. Chiropractic is our primary focus, is our foundation, but we'll be able to meet a lot of different needs as far as with overall health and wellness, and we're really excited about our move that's going to be coming up, and yeah, definitely, thank you, yeah, but we're there now though, so if you we're still in our location, so you definitely, if need be, can come on by.
So in addition to the spine and headaches, what all do you treat? What areas of the body do you treat?
Well, with chiropractic care,
Excuse me, we have another call, and he's just flashing this caller sign on the screen like it's urgent. Caller, you have a comment or question?
Yes, I do. Hi, Dr. Val. How are you?
Hello, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing so. I have a question in regards to arthritis.
Okay.
Especially with this weather, how it's been up and down. And I've been taking medication, and I want to know, how can chiropractic help arthritis?
Well, that's a great question, and I get this so much, young lady. When the weather changes, the seasons change. Anytime a season's changing, your body is adapting to its environment. So in the wintertime, the muscles begin to tighten to hold in more heat. All right, especially around joints. And it begins to get uncomfortable. And the areas that arthritis are in, arth means joint, itis means inflammation. So it's inflammation in a joint. So arthritis isn't a bad thing. It's a natural aging process of the body. It's the degenerative arthritis that's the problem. And where degenerative arthritis comes from is stress and malalignment in a joint for a period of time. When a body is misaligned or there's stress on any area of the body naturally puts calcium deposits in there to strengthen that area. But if that area continues to have that stress there from that misalignment or that stress, what happens is that bone becomes kind of jagged and it becomes damaged. And what we do in our office is we restore the body's normal biomechanics, takes the stress off the joint, which allows inflammation to decrease, which allows proper circulation, and it decreases the pain and restores the body's ability to move and function. Because ultimately, what your body is trying to do when it's healing and repairing is to protect itself. It's trying to ball up. It's trying to build these bone up, but that bone is unhealthy, and that jagged bone literally it digs into your tissues. It becomes very uncomfortable, and it can be also very debilitating.
Okay, we have, I don't know if the doctor's not answering the questions fast enough, but we have another caller on the line. Caller, you have a question or comment?
Yes, hello. My name is Michelle. So glad to hear you, Doctor. We got right into it, boy. So people had all these problems. I'm experiencing some of that change of weather pain. I know that I'd have forward head posture, and my neck has been killing me. I work from home, by the way, so I've been at computers for about 2 years for several hours a day. And so my neck is starting to kill me. Now, my question is for you. What are your thoughts on stem cell therapy and regenerative medicine? And can you, if the bones in the spine have degenerated to, I think, level 4, as you guys call it, can stem cell therapy regenerate bone that's been damaged, or is bone damage irreversible?
The body can always regenerate, except when it's like something lytic or metastasis is begin to spread throughout it, or it begins to necrose. When you're talking about bone and degeneration is when you have the beaks and the claws aggressively around there. So what we do as chiropractors, as far as it regenerating, by motioning that joint and putting it back in its proper biomechanical state, okay, it reduces the stress. When the stress is reduced, you can have increased circulation. When you have increased circulation, all of a sudden you're getting oxygen and nutrients to an area that wasn't getting it. And then those supporting structures around it begin to help support more. Some of the damage that's there when you're talking about a phase 4 degeneration is going to be there, but your body can adapt to it and function properly, and it can get some of the healing benefit of restorative, especially in the area. And so yes, your body can, except on those instances that we just that I just mentioned. Now, when you're talking about the stem cell, you said the stem cell, the injections, the stem cell therapy. I do have doctors that I send patients to get that. Some of them have got phenomenal results. More have than not. But one of the things that we found is that by us working together, by keeping the nervous system clear, and then also getting the therapy, the results have increased by over 30 to 40%. So it does have efficiency, I believe, but it's the way that it's things that you're doing. You got to be making sure you're hydrated. You got to be making sure you're following your doctor's recommendations. There's no thing that you're going to do that's going to just force healing in your body. It's decisions that you make, healthy lifestyle decisions that you make on a daily basis that are going to give you the efficacy as far as in healing the proper way. So yeah, working at all day at home, I mean, that's repetitive motion stress. One of the things you got to realize is that your body is a living machine, and like a car, you've got to get it tuned up. So if you keep driving your car into the ground, you don't get the oil change, even if it's a brand new Cadillac, 2020, it's going to break down. So it's so absolutely.
We're trying to get all our calls in. Caller, you have a comment or question?
We're trying to get all our calls. Caller, you have a comment?
Yes, I do. Somebody else. Yes, I do. Okay.
Caller?
I have spinal stenosis. I'd like to know what can I do to help treat it?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question?
He said he has spinal stenosis. What can he do to help treat it?
You know, with spinal canal stenosis, so if anybody is familiar with that, what spinal canal stenosis is this canal back here. You have this canal back here where your spinal cord runs, right? And over a period of time, as we age with degeneration, that canal begins to close down because of lack of motion. All right. So it depends on. It's always dependent upon the area that it's in, and one of the things that we do, of course, we go back to chiropractic. We adjust your spine. When we restore motion, it increases the area to take pressure off of the spine and the nervous system, so that stenosing back there on the spine begins to take the pressure off, which decreases things like sciatica. It increases function that those nerves go down to in the lower extremities, and it also stops the progression of the degeneration. Something else that's really big too is spinal stenosis oftentimes comes from inflammation. So there's things that you can do naturally to decrease that inflammation, along with getting adjusted. And there's things that are natural. That you don't always have to take an NSAID. An NSAID is good, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, in an emergency situation. And I mean, I'm talking about absolute emergency. But things like cinnamon, garlic, cayenne pepper, red cayenne pepper, and turmeric with black pepper work phenomenal for decreasing inflammation and really making sure that you get that adjustment to motion that joint and build those stabilizers around it. And that's something I see on a regular basis and get phenomenal results with. So
okay, I'm hoping that we can get all our calls in tonight, but it's going to be really, really tight, I'll tell you. Caller, you have a comment or a question?
Hi, Dr. Boss.
Hello.
I heard you do family care, and I heard some of the things as far as chiropractic care within the family.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. A family that gets adjusted together stays healthy together, young lady. We see a lot of families, and it's one of the things I begin to do a lot more intensive studies in, family care, once I start having a family of my own. And I was just looking at a lot of the disparities and what's going on in hospitals with children and families.
I have kids in my family that suffer from knee and lower back pain. What are the age range for the kids that you do attend or help?
Well, I must say my youngest patient is 2 weeks old. And my oldest patient is 96. So we see a wide range of cases that come in with children and get some great results, especially with children. Children oftentimes are extremely, they heal so fast because their body's growing so fast, and they respond so quick to care. So our children's immune systems are a lot higher. We find that our kids do really a whole lot better in school because it helps with relaxation and decreasing hyperactivity. So it absolutely, and especially our children that are nowadays, everybody's playing sports, so it's something that's extremely common. We see a lot of kids, and we'd love to meet your family.
Okay, we have another caller on the line. Caller, you have a comment or question?
Yes, doctor. All this treatment sounds very good. I am calling from before. This is a follow-up question I didn't get to ask. Insurance. How does one pay for these services? If you don't have insurance that covers your services, how can you get treatment?
And that's great. We have
call your office.
They call the office, but we do accept everything, and we don't send anybody away because of that. So definitely call the office, and they'll definitely get you taken care of. And there is a way. I think the majority of my practice members don't either, so don't have insurance. So that's perfectly fine.
Do we have another caller on the line at this point? No callers? Dr. Bart, can you tell me where your office is located?
We're located in Crestwood, Illinois at 13657 South Cicero Avenue, Crestwood, Illinois. Right on Cicero and 137. The number is 708-396-2500. Again, the number is 708-396-2500, and we're located at 13657 South Cicero Avenue. Definitely, and if you have a concern, a health need, we'd love to definitely be the ones to take care of you, serve you, and looking forward to meeting you.
Okay, so we have 5 minutes, about 4 minutes now to wrap up. You have been watching the Doty Report on Comprehensive Health. We've had Dr. Frank Vault Jr. here, who is a chiropractor. He is also does some nutrition work with the individual, and he has answered about 8 or 9 questions, I'm not sure. And we have another caller on the line. The number for the Doty program is 312-282-1375. You can also call the Georgia Doty program and get information, and he can also refer you to Dr. Vault's office and give you his phone number because he's on the show tonight. I have about 1 minute. Caller, you have a comment or question that we can answer in 1 minute?
Yes. Do you have any staff that speak Spanish? Because my family speaks Spanish.
Oh, yes, definitely. In our office, we do have someone that speaks Spanish. So we do accommodate the community. So, it's awesome because all communities are oftentimes underserved. And so that's one of the reasons why we did add that aspect to our office, so we can make sure that we are able to serve the community as well. So absolutely, young lady.
So, Dr. Vault, I'm going to ask you, if you had one thing that you want to say about good health and nutrition, what is it that you would say to our viewers?
I would say that your health is your most prized possession. It's one of the greatest gifts you'll ever have, and one of the things that oftentimes that we neglect the most. We'll put everything in front of our health. We'll put everything in front of ourselves, and we'll neglect the greatest gift that we'll be fighting for on our last moment. So your health is like a savings account. Deposit into it daily and watch the interest grow, and you will enjoy a very happy and full life. But it's never too late to start, so make the proper choices right now.
Okay, we are down to the last minute. Again, I want to thank you all for watching the Doty Report on Comprehensive Health. Again, my name is Beverly Walker. Glad to be your host for tonight. I want to give kudos to Mr. Doty, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Georgia Doty Community Outreach Program, and want to wish our regular host, Miss Yolanda Gibbons, a speedy recovery so that she can come back and take her rightful position at this desk.
Yeah.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you for watching the Diggler Films video block 1. I'm Rashana Baldwin. What's Diggler TV Films, you ask? DigglerFilms.tv is an online broadcasting.
State Farm is announcing the Good Neighbor Relief Program. We're returning.
Diggler Films media content contributors. Look for a new block in the coming weeks. If you would like your content featured on the next video block, email digglerfilmstv@gmail.com. Have a great evening.
Today, nobody cares, but tomorrow they will. Today, nobody cares, but oh, tomorrow they will. They said my future is dark. See me now, slip around. Baby, we are talk when I want you now. See me now, baby. I get my energy from my energy. I be in outer space, but I got inner peace. So tell my enemies that they can't injure me. I know that irritates. You have my sympathies. Well, you should protest. Yeah, you should pick at me. I'm on a losing strike. I'm on a winning streak. I'm out in left field. I'm speaking mentally, but that's a better place than where the benches be. I'm feeling really good. Me and my different beat. Me and my different drummer. He played the timpanis. See, that's what got me here, you hearing me. Me on my black man in the future shit. Call me Billy D. See, I'm just forward looking. That's how I really see. See why you Valentine's. I'm thinking Christmas trees. And that's how this would be. Even at Mickey D's. Semicolon, close parentheses. See me now. Stick around. Baby. Talk when I want around. See me now, I'm beaming. Do you remember me? The guy from verse 1. Fayer's my last name, Never's my first one. You see, I hood a lot, and yeah, I nerd some. Hood's where the heart is, nerds where the words from. Don't represent either, because I merge them. It's kids who wanna leave, and I encourage them. Go out and see the world, never return from. Yeah, you don't come back, unless you learn some. And baby girl, what does it matter where your purse from? Your hair done, your nails did, your ass fat, but you're dumb. Mix Melissa Ford with Maya Angelou. Become a top model and Sojourner too. I try to follow this, what Muhammad do. It's such your own soul inside the sonic you. It's why I'm Ferrari'd up and I'm conscious too. I don't prophesize, I promise you. See me now, slip around, baby. Talk when I want around. Lasers, see me now. I'm beaming. Yeah, it's me again, the guy from verse 2. But it's the last one. It's almost curfew. It's almost not out. So turn your lights on. We're all my 760s with your brights on. Yeah, they are the ones to keep your eyes on. Like how we used to do to keep the house warm. Now those the type of eyes I not cry from. You see the tears of fire run out my crying songs. Now the world's shoulders is what I'm crying on. The world's fast lane is what I'm driving on. What am I driving at? I'm trying to drive it home. I'm in the driver's seat, but you can ride alone. It's never Cyclops, it's never I alone. I'm telling your story wherever I perform. Now if they looking for me, they tell them I'm gone. Out in the bright lights, right where I belong.
Welcome to DigglerFilms.tv. Video block week number 1, May 29th, 2015. And what is Diggler Films TV? Diggler Films is an online broadcasting site that showcases media content Diggler Films Media and Content Division. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ted Williams, and I am the host of a show called Change with Ted Williams, where art, faith, and politics meet. I am a professor, I am an actor, I am an author, and I have been working in media for many years, trying to entertain, educate, and inspire people. I'm happy to be working with Diggler Films on our show to really create content that